the name of God, who by the word and through the Spirit creates, redeems, and sanctifies. Amen. Good morning, St. Mary's.
Good morning.
That's it. Good morning. So you are awake, you are here. Thank you for being here. Thank you, beautiful choir. Always the music is so glorious here. And, I was with your folks at 9 o'clock and then at 10 o'clock and have other occasions to be with your clergy. And you just need to know that Bishop Ann is one of the biggest cheerleaders for St. Mary's because you all have a spirit of grace and truth. You understand to make things beautiful and accessible. You are humble in spirit, but zealous in serving the Lord. And I tell people that. And now I have even more stories to tell, especially now that I am, I've got to get this right. It's not a place at the table. It's the friendship table. I am so excited about the friendship table. So I will just be able to go out from this day saying even more about the generous spirit that is here at St. Mary's in High Point. But right now I want us to think a little bit about this gospel lesson that we just heard. That's quite a story, right? That's quite a story. I grew up in a family of lawyers who love to argue. They love a good argument. And we're kind of coming in the gospel because for a good while now, the Sadducees and Pharisees have been playing a game of let's get the rabbi, right? They don't like Jesus. They're trying to find ways to trip him up in his teaching and his theology. And it's just sort of like each batter that comes to the plate strikes out. And so so now the Pharisees have stepped back and the Sadducees are coming forward like, we'll get him this time. And they set up this really kind of, in some ways, ridiculous story about a poor woman who marries, her husband dies, they have no children, and then according to the Levitical law of the Old Testament, the next brother is supposed to marry her because in order for a male Jew to be remembered, he needs children, right? He needs descendants. Well, brother after brother dies. There are no children, and the Sadducees set up this sort of comical question about, well, then who is she married to in heaven, right? And Jesus has this amazing response. Like, don't you all get it? That while we're on earth, we have a certain way of being in relationship with one another. A relationship that demands that we have children because we have mortality. But in heaven, we are immortal. We are like angels, children of God, children of the resurrection. And so the world of heaven will be ordered quite differently from our affairs on earth. And so Jesus sort of gets the best of them in this theological question about the resurrection. And yet, I think it is fundamental to the human condition, to the way we are wired as human beings, to wonder what will it be like after I die? Will I see my mother again? Will I see the child I lost so long ago? What will it be like? How many of us have been at the side of a beloved one who is dying, and part of the comfort of that moment is to speak of who we will see and greet and know on the other side. It's fundamental to our hope. It's also fundamental to our anxiety and fear. I have to tell you that as a small child, it terrified me, the thought of losing a parent. It was absolutely my worst. I mean, I kind of literally had sleepless nights, a hard time falling to sleep because I would sort of imagine these scenarios. I was that kind of kid. I was a tortured kid. What can I say? There wasn't something in the world to worry about. I would make up something in the world to worry about. I was that kind of child. And I also had this other kind of strange and sort of haunting hypothetical of my own, whereas I was being held at gunpoint, and some stranger was trying to tell me, who did I love more, my parents or God? And I knew that the truth of it was I loved my parents more, and I knew that was the wrong answer. It was just one of those right, we worry about death. We wonder about life after death. It is fundamental, I think, to our human anxiety to be anxious from the time we're born, right? What's next? What's next? Will I be okay? Will I be loved? Will I be taken care of? Will I be able to face whatever comes next? This is what Jesus is trying to tell his disciples and all of those as he is preparing them to accept that he must die. And that in his death will come a new form of life, the resurrection, which sounds great, but what does it mean? Because we can't imagine. We can't imagine. And so, I have a parable according to Bishop Suffragan Ann to share with you to see if this helps at all. Imagine twins in utero, right? Imagine a woman great with 2 children, great with child, and the twins, they have it made. That is their world. And everything is great. You can sleep as late as you want. You can eat any time you want. You can wake your parents up in the middle of the night and they can't really get upset with you about it, right? So you have it made. That is your world. And the twins are loving it. And then something starts to happen. And those labor pains begin, and it is painful. And it is terrifying. And one twin says to the other, "This is it. It's all over. This is it. Let's say goodbye now. It's been great." But the other twin says, "I don't know. I wonder." Because you know those voices that we've heard? You know those sounds that we don't have a word for? Music. Those sounds that we've heard that calm our heartbeat and help us relax. One twin says, "I think there's something more," even though they can't see or possibly know. There's an intimation that there's something more beyond what they could possibly ask or imagine. A whole new world. This is what Jesus is telling us in the life of the resurrection. We do pass through a portal. We are expelled from this life, and it is frightening, and it is uncertain, and it is at times painful. But we do that surrender in the sure and certain hope of new life. But here's the further mystery, that in baptism, we're already adopted into this new resurrection life. In baptism, in the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ, we're not waiting for the resurrection at the end of time. We're participating in that today. Now, Christ has died. Christ is risen. Christ will come again. Christ is. And we live not in just that hope. We live in that reality. I found out, unfortunately, I passed along to my middle child my anxiety about death. When he was 4 years old, he told me that he wanted, I guess he was 3, turning 4, Tom told me that he wanted a breakable Jesus for his birthday. I was a little worried about this. A breakable Jesus. Tom, say more. And so Tom begins to explain. He says, well, I want a Jesus that I could put up on my bookcase. I want a Jesus that I can look at, but probably shouldn't play with, because it might break. I said, Tom, tell me, why do you want a breakable Jesus? He says, because, Mom, when you die, I'll know I can look at my breakable Jesus and know that you're with Jesus. He'd already worked it out. He'd already worked it out. That Jesus, broken on the cross, breaks open this promise. And here's the implication of that promise. Whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's. And if we are not afraid, if death and the fear of death has lost its hold on us, we are free to be alive. Do you see that? We're not just free to hope for the future. We're free to be right now courageous. We cast off a spirit of fear, as it said in Thessalonians a few weeks ago. We cast off a spirit and put on a power of love and courage. And do you not think we need more love and courage now? This is to be children of God. This is to be the children of the resurrection now. We don't need to worry about the life after death. That's taken care of. Why not be engaged and embodied in becoming the beloved community that is promised in heaven? And that's why we hear that call to become a beloved community on earth as it is in heaven. Let's become more loving. Let's become more forgiving. Let's become way more patient. I'm always preaching to myself. Let's become way less fear-filled, controlled by our fears. And let's become more hope-filled, leaning, running a race that says we can risk it all because God has done all in all for us. I want to thank those who will be confirmed and received this morning, because they, in front of God and all the rest of us, are asking that the Lord who has begun a good work in them will strengthen them. And your courage will become our courage. Your faithfulness will increase our faithfulness. Your love multiplies our love and service of the Lord.